Okay, so picture this. It's 1675, and we're in a small Swedish village.
Okay.
It's a chilly morning,
Uh-huh.
but the townsfolk are gathering not for a market day or a festival or anything like that.
Right.
They're there to witness an execution of
Wow.
over 70 people accused of witchcraft.
Oh my gosh.
And this isn't Salem.
No.
This is the Torsa witch trials.
Wow. I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's not as well known as Salem,
Okay.
but it's pretty chilling episode in history,
Mm.
and one that I think holds some pretty crucial lessons for us even today.
Interesting. So Torsoker was actually a much bigger event than Salem.
Much larger in scale, yeah.
Wow.
One of the most intense periods of witch hunts in Swedish history, actually. And, it's easy to think about these events as like relics of a bygone era, right?
Right.
Something out of a history book,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the sources that you shared with me, the account from the Morbid podcast and some of the scholarly articles,
Mm-hmm.
they paint a very different picture.
Oh, really?
They reveal a society that was grappling with anxieties and uncertainties.
Mm.
And in some ways, I think they mirror our own.
That's so interesting. So to really get into this, like how did this happen? How did this tragedy unfold?
Well, to understand that we really need to consider the backdrop of Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries.
Okay.
It was a period of just immense upheaval,
Okay.
socially and religiously.
Uh-huh.
The Protestant Reformation was happening at that time.
Right.
It was challenging the authority of the Catholic Church, shaking people's faith,
Yeah.
and creating a lot of conflict.
Wow. So it was really just like the world was changing around them.
Yeah, the ground was shifting beneath their feet.
Yeah.
And in those times of uncertainty, people are often looking for explanations.
Right.
They cling to age-old beliefs, even as the world around them is changing.
I see.
And this is where witchcraft accusations start to come in.
Okay, so how so?
Well, the church was facing all these challenges to its authority.
Right.
They needed a way to reassert control.
Okay.
So they tapped into those existing fears and superstitions that were already in society, and they demonized those who didn't conform
Okay.
or who practiced folk traditions that they didn't like.
So it wasn't really about religion then?
Well, it was about religion, but it was also about power and social control.
I see.
And if we look at the sources closely, we see one text in particular that played a pretty chilling role in all of this.
Okay, what's that?
The Malleus Maleficarum.
Gamalius Maleficarum.
Yeah, published in 1486.
Okay.
And it essentially became a witch hunting manual.
A witch hunting manual.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was written by a German Catholic clergyman named Heinrich Kramer.
Okay.
And he was deeply obsessed with rooting out witchcraft. And this book describes witches as real, dangerous in league with the devil.
Okay.
It even outlines methods for identifying them, interrogating them, and punishing them.
Oh, wow. So this book basically gave people a blueprint for how to persecute witches.
Yep.
Gosh.
And what's especially disturbing is how the Malleus really targeted women.
Oh, really?
Kramer viewed women as inherently weaker, more susceptible to temptation, and therefore more likely to be witches.
Wow.
So this deeply misogynistic view unfortunately resonated with the societal norms of the time.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah, so you have this mix of social upheaval and religious anxieties and this text that demonizes women.
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is. And is that what led to what happened in Sweden?
It definitely created a fertile ground for mass hysteria.
Okay.
And that brings us to Sweden and what was known as the Great Noise.
The Great Noise.
Yeah.
What was that?
This was a period between 1668 and 1676 when witch accusations in Sweden reached a fever pitch.
So like a wave of fear and paranoia.
Exactly. People were just primed to believe in witchcraft, and accusations spread like wildfire.
And this Great Noise, was it based on anything real?
Oh, yeah. It was fueled by some very real events. Well, one of the catalysts was an incident with a young shepherd girl named Gertrude Svensdotter.
Yeah.
She was accused of walking on water to retrieve stray goats.
Walking on water? Come on, how could anyone believe that?
Well, in a society that didn't have a scientific understanding of the world,
Right.
these claims weren't automatically dismissed.
I guess so.
There was so much superstition and belief in the supernatural that even the most fantastical stories could seem plausible.
So this girl's miracle, whether it was real or not,
Right.
became evidence of witchcraft.
Exactly. And under pressure, Gertrude confessed.
Oh, wow.
And she named other people as witches.
Oh, no.
And that really set off a chain reaction of accusations.
Wow, so people started turning on their neighbors and friends.
Absolutely. even family members.
It's just amazing how quickly fear can turn into suspicion.
Yeah. And how rumors can escalate into full-blown accusations.
Exactly. And that brings us to Torsa, right?
Exactly. Torsa became the epicenter of one of the most horrific episodes of this witch hunt.
Oh, God.
So we've got this volatile mix, right? Societal change, religious anxiety, and a text that basically demonizes women.
Right.
And then Torsa enters the picture.
Yeah.
This small village that becomes like a terrifying example of how these forces can converge.
Yeah.
What happened in Torsa?
Well, Torsa became the stage for this real tragedy that was fueled by this clergyman named Laurentius Christofori Horneus. He was tasked with rooting out witchcraft in the village.
Okay.
And he maybe took his job a little too seriously.
The sources mentioned these Vivgosar, or wise boys.
Right.
These children who claim to see witches.
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of like a dark fairy tale.
Yeah, it's really creepy.
How could children hold so much power in a community?
Well, I think the Vizgasar were a really chilling manifestation of the power dynamics that were at play. Remember, this was a society where children were seen as innocent and pure.
Okay.
Their word was considered untainted, especially when it came to spiritual matter.
So their accusations, no matter how fantastical, were taken at face value.
Pretty much, yeah.
I can't even imagine the fear that must have gripped that village.
Yeah, it would have been terrifying.
To live in a community where a child's gaze could determine your fate.
Yeah, and these Vizgasar, they pointed fingers.
Right.
They accused people based on who knows what, a feeling, a dream, a grudge.
Right.
And over 70 individuals were accused.
Wow.
Mostly women, based solely on the testimony of these boys.
And the trials themselves, did the accused have any chance to defend themselves against these accusations?
Unfortunately, no. The trials in Torsa were really just a mockery of justice. The accused were denied any real opportunity to defend themselves.
Oh, okay.
Torture was commonplace.
Yeah.
Used to extract confessions that would then be used to justify their executions.
So these people, mostly women, they were caught in this system with no escape.
Yeah, it was a really dark time.
What was the ultimate outcome of the Torsa trials?
Well, on a single day in 1675, all 71 of the accused were beheaded and then burned at the stake.
Oh my gosh.
The site of the execution is actually known as Witch Mountain today.
Wow.
It's a haunting reminder of the horrors that happened there.
From a girl walking on water to the mass execution of 71 people.
Yeah.
It's just a chilling illustration of how mass hysteria can grip a community.
Right.
It makes you wonder, though, did things change after Torsa?
The Torsa trials, while horrifying, they actually marked a turning point in Sweden. The sheer scale of the executions shocked a lot of people, even those who had previously believed in witchcraft.
Did people start to question the methods that were used?
Yeah, exactly.
The reliance on child witnesses?
Public opinion began to shift, and some of the Vizgasar may be burdened by guilt or facing scrutiny.
Okay.
They admitted to lying.
Wow.
So by 1676, the fervor of the Great Noise had largely subsided.
So in a way, Torsa became a wake-up call.
Right.
This tragic reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority and blind faith.
It's a reminder of the enduring power of fear. When fear takes hold, reason often takes a back seat.
Yeah.
People are more likely to accept outlandish claims, to turn against their neighbors, to justify horrific acts.
It feels very relevant today.
Yeah, it does.
You know, centuries later, we've seen how myth-information, fear-mongering, and scapegoating can still be used to manipulate public opinion.
Absolutely. The Torsa trials are a reminder that we can't take justice, fairness, or critical thinking for granted.
Right.
These are things that we constantly need to safeguard.
Like that saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Exactly.
We need to learn from these historical tragedies.
Yeah. And speaking of learning from the past, it's worth noting that even Heinrich Kramer, the author of Malleus Maleficarum, he faced some pushback during his lifetime.
You mean even back then people questioned his methods and obsession with witch hunting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was considered an extremist.
Wow.
Even by the standards of his time.
Okay.
He faced resistance from both church and secular authorities
Uh-huh.
who were skeptical of his claims and even his sanity.
So even in an era of witch hunts, there were voices of reason pushing back against the fanaticism.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are always individuals who question the prevailing narratives.
Right.
Who stand up for what they believe is right.
Sadly, in Kramer's case, even though he was eventually removed from his position
Right.
and his methods were condemned, His book continued to circulate and influence witch hunts for centuries.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
It's a reminder of the power of ideas both for good and evil.
For sure, it highlights the importance of critical thinking, of questioning the information we're given, and being wary of those who exploit fear and prejudice for their own gain.
This deep dive into the Torsa witch trials has been a sobering journey.
It has.
A stark reminder of what can happen when fear and superstition reign supreme. But as we wrap up this part of our conversation, I'm curious what ultimately became of Torsa. Did the village ever recover from this dark chapter in its history?
Well, it's difficult to say for sure how the trauma of the witch trials impacted Torsa in the long term. What we do know is that the village has erected a memorial to the victims, acknowledging the injustices that occurred, and honoring those who were wrongly accused and executed.
It's a powerful symbol of remembrance.
Yeah.
A testament to the community's commitment to facing its past,
Right.
however painful it may be.
And hopefully a reminder that the past is not something to be forgotten, but rather a source of lessons that can help us navigate the complexities of the present.
You know, it's one thing to read about these events in a history book,
Right.
but to really grasp the human cost of the Torsa witch trials.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we need to think about the lasting impact on the community.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the trauma that was inflicted by such a horrifying event.
Absolutely. The psychological scars left by these witch hunts would have been profound. Just imagine living under this cloud of constant suspicion.
Right.
Fearing that your neighbor, your friend, even your own family member might accuse you of witchcraft.
Right.
That level of fear and paranoia can erode the very fabric of a community.
And for those who were accused, even if they weren't executed,
Right.
the experience of being interrogated, imprisoned, perhaps even tortured, would have been devastating.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about the long-term psychological effects.
Right.
Not just on the individuals, but on the community as a whole.
Exactly. The trauma of these events could have lingered for generations.
Wow.
Think about the families that were torn apart.
Right.
The children left orphaned.
Yeah.
The sense of collective guilt and grief. These wounds don't just vanish with time.
It really highlights the importance of acknowledging historical trauma.
Yeah.
And understanding its lasting impact.
Absolutely.
We can't just pretend these things didn't happen or that they don't have consequences for how we live today.
And it's not just about the past either. Recognizing these patterns of fear, prejudice, and scapegoating that fueled the witch hunts can help us understand similar dynamics in our own time.
You know, as we've delved into the Torsa witch trials, I've been struck by these uncomfortable parallels to some of the social divisions that we're seeing today. It's like we haven't fully learned the lessons of history.
It's true. While we may not be burning people at the stake anymore, the tendency to demonize those who are different, to spread misinformation, to silence dissenting voices. These are all echoes of the same mindset that led to the witch hunts.
Think about the way certain groups are scapegoated in times of crisis. How fear is used to manipulate public opinion. How social media can amplify rumors and accusations.
Yeah, it's like a digital witch hunt in a way.
Exactly.
It's a stark reminder that the forces that drove the witch hunts are not relics of the past. They are still very much present in our world. And we need to be vigilant in recognizing and resisting them.
So what can we do? How do we as individuals push back against these harmful tendencies and create a more just and compassionate society?
Well, I think it starts with self-awareness. We need to examine our own biases, to question the narratives that are presented to us, and to be wary of those who seek to exploit our fears and prejudices for their own gain.
It's about cultivating empathy.
Yes.
Seeking understanding and engaging in respectful dialogue, even with those we disagree with.
Exactly.
It's about remembering that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their beliefs or background.
And it's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. You know, the people who challenged the witch hunts, who spoke out against injustice, they were often marginalized or silenced. But their courage serves as an inspiration for us today.
As we conclude this deep dive into the Torsa witch trials, I'm left with a mix of emotions.
I bet.
Sadness for the victims, anger at the injustice, and a sense of responsibility to learn from these tragic events.
It's a reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates. It's a living narrative that shapes who we are and how we understand the world around us.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated.
The Torsa witch trials may be a dark chapter in history,
They are.
but they offer us invaluable lessons
Absolutely.
about the fragility of reason, the dangers of unchecked power, and the enduring need for empathy and justice.
I agree.
Let's honor the memory of the victims by working towards a future where such horrors are never repeated.
And by remembering that the fight against intolerance and injustice is a continuous one.
Right.
It requires constant vigilance, critical thinking, and the courage to speak truth to power.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Torsa witch trials.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been a challenging but important conversation.
It has.
And remember, history is all around us.
Yes.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.